this is essentially a description of CTV in a nutshell. It is a prototype service that enables viewers of the television show, or whether it could be TV using our AT&T Uverse offering, as I mentioned earlier, or it could be online video watching as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be just geared towards the TV. But it allows viewers to interact and participate in recorded shows, whether they're watching simultaneously, which you can do, or synchronously, I would say, or at different times. And this asynchronous component of CTV is really what I find to be most compelling about the service, because it's easy enough to really be sort of watching the TV show together synchronously, but it's this asynchronous mode because of the advent of the DVR that you want to be able to enable people to participate in. And then you watch the recorded show and you're interactive. Now, I've had people ask me, well, people who watch TV, they just want to be couch potatoes. They just want to sit there and they don't want to interact with the TV. But in fact, what we found in our user trials that we've had with CTV is that people do want to be interactive. They do want to engage their TV viewing experience and be interactive with it. And I think that's just going to grow as the newer generation comes around, who've been used to interacting very heavily with their devices and their equipments. So we allow the viewers of the TV shows to add text via a keyboard or via a mobile device like an iPhone. They can generate sketches. They can do gestures like a thumbs up or a thumbs down to indicate points in the video in which they like or dislike a particular part of the show. We can also leave audio annotations. So while somebody's watching the show, you're leaving these text messages and audio annotations or gestures, and then later on when your friends come in to watch the show, they can then see these text messages and gestures that you've left when you watch the show. So this is where, while you're watching the show, you feel as if the person, your friends, are watching it with you, because you can see the comments they've made. You can respond to the comments they've made as well, and leave comments throughout the video, and it's annotated temporally to the video. The information we thought would be fun to convey via avatars, and so we have this representation of a virtual audience, and each avatar on the screen represents one of your friends. So I think if we go to the next slide, you'll see a snapshot of the interface and what it looks like. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Mystery Science Theater, but for those who have seen that show, Mystery Science Theater, it's kind of like a hokey sci-fi show, but the main appeal of that show was that there was on the bottom of the screen like commentators that would make comments about the show. So that was kind of the inspiration behind having this virtual audience and having these avatars. So what you can see at the bottom of the screen are the avatars, which represent your friends, and you have names that you can associate with the avatars. And you can see the one in the middle, Brian, is expressing an emotion. He's smiling, and you can have these avatars be animated. You can use the various emoticon concepts to represent this, and so the little avatar turns his head and smiles at you, or is angry, or sticks his tongue out at you. And this gets then time-stamped to that place in the video, so that if your friend comes in later on and is watching the show, at that point in the show when Brian smiled, I will see the little avatar turn and smile at me. Likewise, you'll see various text annotations come up on the screen. If you go to the next screenshot, you'll have a richer representation of the screen. So if we can go to the next slide. There we go. You'll see one of the avatars has a little caption above his head. This is our mobility CEO, Ralph de la Vega, who saw a demonstration of CTV and played around with it and left a message. This text message is, "This is me," and you can see it appear above his head. You can see off to the right Randall Stevenson, our CEO, who I think looks a little bit surprised as he's watching the Discovery Channel here. If you look closely above the avatars, you'll see a timeline. That timeline is a way to indicate to the viewers where my friends have made comments or left annotations or gestures. So if you look above that, you'll see areas where there are little icons to represent where in the video I've left these messages. So I can actually just jump around in the video and go to those places where my friends have left comments, and that way I can just go in and look at that. You can imagine now also creating summaries of these shows that only contain segments where your friends have left you comments and messages. You might, I don't know if you can see on the slide, but you'll have these little red areas shaded on that timeline. That's where the commercials are. So yeah, we can mark commercials and also fast forward across them, of course. But these are just ways to enrich the experience of watching and make it easy for a viewer to skip around and look to see where friends have left messages, and they can also respond and leave messages there. You can choose who your avatars and friends are. I often get asked, well, how many friends can you have? At the moment, we have a limit just set at 12. We found by asking people what kind of group size they would like, that 12 seemed reasonable. If we want to have a bigger audience, we probably have to be a little bit more creative about the interface and how you want to represent these avatars. But we did run some user studies that showed that we did a comparison, basically, one where we used avatars and one in which we didn't. We used just a traditional chat window to interact with the TV, and we found that people were much more interactive when there were avatars that were representing themselves rather than just straightforward chat. So clearly there's value to be gained by having these avatars. You can imagine for, we recently here in the United States had the what they call March Madness, which is the college basketball finals. And you can imagine if we're watching the college basketball game, you might want to dress up your avatars. You can, if you're a Duke fan, you can wear the Duke jerseys and the Duke colors, or if you are a Butler fan, you can put on your Butler jerseys and have fun with it. Same thing with the Super Bowl. You know, all these sporting events are very, very conducive to this kind of technology. I would say that for the sporting events, it's probably more likely that people will use the synchronous capability, so that people can be watching together the show and not necessarily have to be in the same place. For example, I would have liked to have used this while watching the Butler game that took place before the final game, because I was in Florida and some of my friends were back in New Jersey, and it would have been fun to do that. So that's one way of approaching the problem, and how you would use the synchronous component. So that kind of gives you a view of the interface and how you would interact with it. The next thing is, why would you want to use CTV? I think I've already given some of that motivation, but there is this proliferation of video on demand services and these DVRs. Online video content is growing and altering the way people consume media, so we want to be able to provide people, again, that ability to be social while consuming this kind of media. Consumers these days have more control over their viewing habits and are more likely to view programs based on their own personal schedules and preferences. So we want to be able to provide that to them, but also provide them with that ability to feel like you're watching it with somebody else, to enhance that group cohesion and social capital that I mentioned at the beginning, and to be able to support really the synchronous and asynchronous collaborative viewing that CTV brings. If we go to the next slide, the next slide will give you an idea of the various people that we think could be consumers of CTV. We obviously have the consumers themselves, but we have folks like the content providers or the broadband providers, even rating agencies. As I mentioned, one of the features of CTV is the ability to do a thumbs up and a thumbs down. The ability to do a thumbs up and a thumbs down where it's marked temporally in the video makes it possible now to not just rate a show overall, which kind of gives you a very coarse-grained summary of what's going on, but now you have a more finer-grained way of rating a show. You actually can tell which parts of the show did people like and which parts didn't they like. Or you might also look at what parts of the show did my friends like or didn't like, and where did we disagree. Like maybe I liked one part of it and my friend didn't, and you know, you can start